Well, hello, this is Lancashire Business Week. I'm Richard Slater and I'll be your pilot as we steer around a series of themes designed to get to the heart of the county's business landscape. And on behalf of Lancashire Business View and our headline sponsor, CG Professional, I'm delighted to welcome you to this, our first event of Lancashire Business Week, the first of our breakfast blasts. Our job this week is to inspire, advise, connect, and dare I say it, entertain. And to do this, we have more than 30 speakers ready to share insight, experience, and expertise, and to answer your questions, which please you can send us through the chat box. As we progress through the week, our focus will shift to jobs and skills, well-being and inclusivity, leadership and change, and on Friday, which is Lancashire Day itself, it's aspiration and celebration, and you are invited to them all. Today, though, our twin themes are opportunities and challenges. All businesses, all organisations have faced unprecedented challenges over recent months, and there are more ahead. Coronavirus is with us for a while yet, and we exit the EU in just over a month. But there's a flip side to challenge. And that flip side is opportunity. And some opportunities have emerged as a result of the crisis. Others are more long-term. And if levelling up means anything at all, there should be more opportunities heading to Lancashire. As with all our breakfast blasts, we'll be opening with interviews and moving to a panel discussion. And here to open Lancashire Business Week and help frame the opportunities and challenges conversation, would you welcome our first guests? David Harland is Chief Executive of Eden Project International, which aims to have an Eden project on every habited continent by 2025. David is leading Eden to China, to Australia, to the USA, and of course, to Morecambe. Welcome, David.
Hey, Richard. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Daniel Cochlin, or Dan as we're going to call him today, is Head of External Affairs at the Northern Powerhouse Partnership, the organisation bringing together the business and civic leaders of the North to rebalance the economy and create opportunities for the 15 million people who live here. Welcome to you, Daniel. Now, David, if I may come to you first. David, there are many big ticket investment opportunities that Lancashire has secured and is seeking. Now, I would suggest to you that Eden Project North is a poster boy. What are the key challenges for you in delivering a project of this scale and ambition? And perhaps you just set the scene for us as to where you are with the project.
Sure. So, yeah. Oh God, the pressure of being the poster child. It's on the poster behind me, actually, isn't it? So, as you can see, and look, where we are with the project is that we're in the government machine at the moment, trying to get the next slug of money in there, which is always a really fun process. He says with a grin, and what we're hoping to do is to see that in the budget next year, whenever that might be. And that will really then enable the project to move forward in terms of the private sector match and everything else that we're doing. What we're doing in the interim is that we've got a design team working on the next stage of the designs. So we get a planning application in around springtime with a bit of luck as well. So we're not sitting still. I mean, turning to the challenges, I don't know what the people of Morecambe have done to this country, but everybody knows this town. I mean, you just gave me a nice intro. I do spend, or I did before the pandemic, spend a lot of time out of the country. And people in Australia, they don't want to talk about their project, they want to talk about Morecambe. Which is wonderful. And I think, so actually the first challenge, if you like, for us is, making sure that we don't let down the people of Lancashire, of Morecambe particularly. Of course, there's challenges on any project like this about land and money, but the land, we've got a big tick in the box because it's owned by the council and there's a deal done there. Money, we think we're on a really good path there, and we're pretty certain we can fund it. And then the final bit is, if you like, the challenge is then keeping everybody together. So one of the big things about our project here in Cornwall, where I'm standing right now, is that we invested very heavily into the supply chain. and making sure that we can give everybody the opportunities that we really want, and keeping people enthused is a big part of it.
So that's part of the challenge. You mentioned the money there. You put a bid in £70-some million. Is that correct?
It is. It's 70 million of the 125 million pounds. So it's a big amount of money for many of us. But I think in terms of what it can deliver in terms of social and economic change, because when you look at Morecambe, you'll have stood there on the front there. You can see the lovely Lake District in the background. You've got the fabulous bay in front of you. And the history of Morecambe, of course, was it was a place that you went to take the air. You went to taste the exotic at the end of the pier. Cheap air travel killed that off in the 60s and 70s, as with many British seaside resorts. And very sadly, the town behind you now, is experiencing levels of deprivation that actually we should be ashamed of. And I think a big part of this project is about driving optimism actually back in to the town and actually to the region, and to drive out that deprivation, to make sure that people don't have to leave to have careers. They can actually have careers there, and to break, people talk about educational poverty as well, and making sure that there is hope for the young in that area.
You mentioned optimism. How would you know people will come?
How will I know that people will come? The little story, I suppose, is that in Cornwall, our original business plan was for 500,000 people, a top case of 675,000 people. Year one, 1.8 million people turned up, and that causes its own problems, by the way. Here, I think, and remember that Cornwall is far away from everywhere, with a very small population. The reason we're confident that people will come to Morecambe is, one, there is a market. There's 10.2 million people within a 2-hour drive of that location, before you even add tourism to Lancashire and to the lakes and beyond. But we're going to create something that people haven't seen before. It's not a copy of what's here in Cornwall. It's very, very new, exploring very different themes. And we think we're going to try and blow people's socks off. In fact, we don't think, we know we're going to blow people's socks off. That's why they're going to want to come, because they're going to come and then they're going to tell their friends and they're going to want to come too.
Well, thank you very much for giving us a headline. Socks will be blown off in Morecambe. I like very much. Thank you. Just one more thing before I move on to Dan. How are you going to be able to bring in the local business community? What opportunities will be created in the supply chain? What opportunities will be created through the education process?
Sure. So we've been talking to a lot of different people. I mean, we've met honestly thousands of people over the last couple of years, and many of them are businesses, and the Chamber of Commerce and all those fine institutions have been tremendous support. The key for us is that we want to buy at least 80% of our goods and services in Lancashire, because that's how you really drive change. And you've got some guests on later that have got some fabulous cheese and that sort of stuff. Just one example. And here in Cornwall, what we did is we invested into those supply chains. So we'll actually pay more if people can prove why it costs more to source things locally. And very much the way that the place is being designed, the way that the buildings are being designed, is there's a large area of public realm. And this is an urban site that we're designing here in Morecambe, and therefore it will be very much part of the fabric of the town. So there's real opportunity for people to get involved, big and small, and we will work with people to make sure that they can supply us in the quantities that they're able to.
Thank you, David. Now, don't go away, because I'm sure we'll have something else to ask you in a moment. But if I may move on to Dan from the Northern Powerhouse Partnership. Dan, in various ways, I guess as Northerners, we're feeling a little bit of a squeeze at the moment, but we did bare our teeth recently, and in a collective fashion. And I wonder, what next for the Northern Powerhouse? What next for the movement of the Northern Powerhouse, Dan?
Well, morning, Richard, and it's a pleasure to be with you all on Lancashire Day today. I think that the Northern Powerhouse was always intended to be a long-term project. A lot of people, their only kind of real point of reference to the Northern Powerhouse is something that people put on social media when their trains are running late in an ironic way to say, you know, what's this Northern Powerhouse we were promised? But it is a long-term ambition. It is aiming at kind of 2050 as a cut-off point in terms of how effective it's been. And it's about better connecting the North, whether that's through connectivity, through trains, through digital connectivity, through business collaboration. It's all of those things. It's about improving education standards, and it's about getting more local control, which is what you touched on then with the North baring its teeth. But I think with the focus on the North so much during this pandemic, and the fact that we are going to be worse hit than other parts of the country in terms of job losses, in terms of economic damage, we also need to look at those short-term measures by which we can increase the North's wealth and make it as prosperous as the South. You know, the whole principle of what the Northern Powerhouse is about is improving productivity. The North has always suffered from sluggish productivity compared to London and the South East and other parts of the country. And that's inevitable in a country where everything is pointed towards London. We actually need to start baring our teeth, as you say.
What examples can we use, Dan, to evidence for ourselves that the levelling up agenda is for real?
So I think if you went on the streets of Preston or Morecambe or Blackburn and asked people what levelling up had meant to them or what the Northern Powerhouse had delivered for them, you know, you probably get a pretty blunt answer, quite frankly. And I think there's a real challenge there in how levelling up can really be demonstrated to people's lives as made a difference. If you look at the election and what happened in the election end of last year, all those traditional red wall seats that the Conservatives won, suddenly they need to do something about all those areas, and then if they want to win them again, they need to actually deliver some kind of commitment to those areas. And what our case is, we can't just talk about a few little railway lines reopening here or a bit of investment there. You need to fund major projects. That is things like HS2 and Northern Powerhouse Rail. It's things like Net Zero North, which is creating a sustainable economy in the north of England. It's things like carbon capture and storage, small modular reactors. All these industries in the north is far better than anywhere else. You can't do these in the middle of Whitehall. You've got to do them in places like the north, where we've got the resource, the skills, the people, the heritage.
What's going to get in the way of that? Sorry, my apologies, Dan, after you.
Well, I just said create industries that you can export all around the world, and post-Brexit, that's going to be even more important.
If there are some opportunities that are going to come to us through this, where do you think that the challenges will be in terms of Lancashire businesses securing work and securing an influence in what happens next?
I think having a collective voice to kind of rally behind is extremely helpful. And you know, I hate to bring the devolution topic into the conversation so early on, because I'm sure that will be a theme throughout today. But we have seen the power and the collective will, let's say, of areas in the north that have got elected mayors. We have seen that in Merseyside, in Greater Manchester, and particularly somewhere like Tees Valley, which is, you know, a kind of small, non-urban combined authority, which has pulled far above its weight because it has a Tory mayor and therefore has been first in the queue for securing funds. So I'm sure we'll touch on this later, but securing some form of devolution in Lancashire as a whole, or parts of Lancashire, would be a great step forward, I think.
You'll be aware of the political environment in which we operate in Lancashire. 15 local authorities, including 2 unitaries and a county. Yet they did manage to come together pretty well, despite their political differences. They came together pretty well in their bid for additional funding for coronavirus to Whitehall. And it was a discussion that was taking place with Whitehall at about the same time as Liverpool and Manchester. I'm struggling to see that Lancashire came out any worse, and I'm wondering if the idea that a disparate collective, does that have the same strength as a core collective?
I think there's a difference between negotiating on a rescue funds for a pandemic and entering tier restrictions, as there is to kind of longer term collaborative collegiate views around what the direction of a city region or another area should look like. You're right about the negotiations. I think some of the Lancashire MPs played a significant role in that space, particularly some of the Conservative MPs in this new Northern Research Group, who are very prominent ones from Lancashire in that group. But I think it's more about the longer term vision. It's more about what you want that area to be known for and to be doing, basically. So, Andy Burnham is very clear what he wants to happen in GM and how he wants it to be driven forward and how he's campaigning towards that. And if you look at what Andy's achieved over the past couple of years, I don't mean this in a mean way, probably not a huge amount because it's a very early time. But what he has done is provide that focal point, that leadership. Anyone knows now, you want anything done in GM, you go to Andy. I think that's a very good model for other areas to try and replicate.
Thank you. If I can come back to David, if I may. David, excuse me. There's no doubt that the work that you do brings international attention upon an area. How do you imagine you will be pitching Eden North to an international audience?
Well, I think we'll be pitching to say, look, Lancashire has an identity, a little like Cornwall does. People know Lancashire all over the world for a variety of reasons. So that's a good place to start. I think in terms of what's around Lancashire as well is rather helpful. So you've got the fabulous Lake District. I know it's over the border, but it's part of the offer. And I think as a whole, what we'll be saying to people is, look, this is something where there are all sorts of different things that you can do, across a range of days, and how you get real economic and social changes by actually getting people to stay longer in an area. I do quite a lot of work in China, and if you go and look at a Chinese Lonely Planet equivalent, and you look at it for England, basically or for Britain, you would be led to believe that basically the only places that exist are London, Edinburgh, Stratford and Bath. And when you think about
I've never heard of Oswaldtwistle.
Well, exactly. I mean, I always add a little entry in handwriting on the ones that I see. No, but the key here is that you've got to be on the routes, you've got to be on the maps for those visitors, because that's where visitors are going to come from. Post-pandemic, let's hope that's quick. But we will be wanting to get international visitors, and you just, as I say, the same as Cornwall, you've just got to persuade people to get from Bath down to Cornwall, the same as here. You've got to persuade them that there's good reasons to go to the Lakes, to Manchester, to Liverpool, and hopefully come into the great assets that Lancashire have got.
Thank you very much. And to you, if I may, Dan, that was me about talking about Lancashire pushing out to the international world. What about Lancashire just in the context of Northern Powerhouse or Northern England? How can Lancashire get its voice heard?
Well, just very quickly to touch on the point that David made, another aspect, if you talk to China about the North, is they don't recognise the scale of smaller northern places. What they do recognise is an area of 15 million people across the whole of the North, and their first question is, well, why haven't you got fast trains that connects the whole area? So I think there's a real international dimension to what the Northern Powerhouse can achieve as well. But I think a lot of people in London, when you say Northern Powerhouse, will say, well, that's Manchester, isn't it? And actually that's one of the biggest kind of fallacies that I think exists. Some of the real key strengths in the North, I've mentioned energy as being one, advanced manufacturing is another. We've seen the AMRC, the Advanced Manufacturing Research Centre, open recently in the North West, as well as in Sheffield and other parts. Those assets aren't in big cities; they're all over Lancashire and Cumbria and the North East and Teesside and places like that. And actually, counties like Lancashire can play as important a role, if not actually more important, than some of the big cities, because this is where the space is, this is where the heritage is, this is where the skills are. One thing that links David and myself is this Net Zero North proposal that I mentioned a few minutes ago, which would plan to open a skills hub in Morecambe to look at how we would train 16,000 students to contribute to a net zero plan for the north of England. That's not going to happen in the middle of Manchester or Liverpool. So every part of the north can play its part. And what is really important is the businesses that are on this call today getting behind the principles that we're trying to put forward and put the case to government that every part of the north is worth investing in.
Thank you very much. Now, please, gentlemen, stay with us. But ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to our next round of guests. So please welcome our panelists. From Butlers Farmhouse Cheeses, please welcome the owner, Gill Hall. We have Julien Parven, who's a director at Daisy Communications, a Lancashire Business Week patron. We've got Jamie Grimshaw, who's an investment executive at FW Capital and a Lancashire Business Week patron. And finally today, we've got Ben Blackman, who's operations consultant at Lancashire 2025, which I'm going to translate for you, is in this sense, Ben is bidding for the City of Culture and also a patron of Lancashire Business Week. Now, can I remind you that we welcome your questions through the chat box. But in the meantime, Ben Blackman, if I may come to you. Ben, you're doing this, you're hovering in a little bit of a world that Dan and David have both explained there. It feels to me as though you're pushing this regional message, but you could also be pushing a national message. What are your opportunities, Ben?
Well,
I'm going to reframe that. And what are the opportunities for Lancashire from your work?
okay, good question. And I think actually my internet cut out annoyingly halfway through that, but I think I'd echo a lot of what both of those guys have said. And actually, in terms of David at the Eden Project, like I think we'd echo all the key messages he talks about. And an Eden Project will definitely be a massive part of our bid to become UK City of Culture. But actually, the opportunity for our bid and for Lancashire is allowing a platform for the whole of Lancashire. And a bit what Dan went into at the end, for us, it is about villages, towns, cities, £70 million projects like Eden, right through the different scales down to literally £70 projects by artists in a village somewhere in Lancashire. The challenge, undoubtedly for us, is bringing together Lancashire. We're trying to circumnavigate all the politics and all of that to bring together a county that, if we can bring that together, has 1.5 million residents, is twice the size of Greater London. But essentially, we're trying to scale all the different sectors. So we're trying to present a platform and an opportunity on which to stage Lancashire, whether you're a business, whether you're in the public sector, education, culture, whatever it is. We're trying to be that platform that actually, again, puts us in the forefront nationally and internationally.
So you said about one of the challenges is bringing those disparate groups, those disparate organisations together. I mean, Ben, the truth is the businesses and our communities aren't that much bothered about those borders and those boundaries that you're describing. Is that a frustration that you need to hurdle political or sub-regional local authority boundaries to make this project move ahead?
Well, probably a bit like David talked about. You know, we're in the midst of making sure we get the public sector funding behind this bid that we require from Lancashire, and we're doing well with that. We've got 15 local authorities in Lancashire, and I've spent quite a lot of time talking to each of them, and that's undoubtedly a challenge. But the next stage of what we're trying to do is actually is galvanise the private sector. And that's a massive opportunity and something that I'm quite buoyed about, because you're right, they don't care where they sit within Lancashire in terms of the politics or the funding or anything like that. They just want to champion what they do. And you know much better than me, as to all the people on this call, that the skill, innovation, potential of those businesses, whether it is cheese, whether it's technology, whether it's tourism, whatever it is, it's here in Lancashire. Our job, and I suppose this is a challenge for me. You said, you know, Ben's putting in a bid to win UK City of Culture. Luckily, there's a few more people than just Ben, but it's not that many at this stage. And it does feel a bit like that. Our biggest challenge is trying to bring together the public sector and the private sector. And we're just at early stages of that in terms of the private sector. And I hope you will see a lot more from people like me, and we'll be able to start to articulate not just the key messages of it will bring inward investment, it will create jobs, it will do blah, 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 but actually tell you how you can get involved as a business, how it will benefit you, your employees, their families, and all of that stuff.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ben. Julien, can I come to you? Julien, you're a director at Daisy Communications, a fabulous Lancashire business, hundreds of employees, born out of a shed in a backyard. That's literally how Daisy Communications began life, but now one of our powerhouse businesses. What are the challenges that you're facing, Julien? I'm thinking a lot of your work is business to business work, and I'm wondering how your marketplace is faring and what your key challenges and opportunities are.
Thanks, Richard. Yeah. So, good morning, everybody. You're right. We are a B2B organisation. So our remit is to help UK business, but also, given our legacy and our heritage, to help Northern business improve their communications, improve their connectivity, and to put them onto a footing where our customers are able to compete and compare themselves with the large multinationals that perhaps are very much London and South East based.
I think, Julien, one of the things that's in my head is that, and you know, it's not my original idea, but I have kind of obsessed with it, is that all of our customers are changing a little bit. They've all changed, and we need to change with them. What have you had to change, Julien, to anticipate and stay with the new needs of your customers?
Absolutely. I mean, particularly across the last 7 or 8 months, we've seen a groundbreak change in terms of customers' consumption of technology and telecoms. So to the point where we're coming out, or hopefully coming out of this current phase of the pandemic, and we see that we've got 3 real differentiated types of customers. So there's the innovators who are looking at the impact of COVID and how that's given them a real catalyst to change their business and move from being a bricks and mortar based organization to very much being one that's remote, that empowers and that promotes flexible working, remote working. And the impact that that's had on those organizations is completely changed their landscape in terms of how they look for their talent pool, because they're no longer restricted to being within a certain locale and being within a certain radius of their base, but they're able to spread their net much wider. We're then seeing that there are very much traditionalists and organizations that either by choice or by design are not able to embrace that innovative remote and flexible working. And we've had to support those in different ways in terms of changing the technology, refreshing the technology. And it's been a real catalyst along this digital transformation journey for those types of organization, and taking them to a perspective where we've had to move them to the cloud. So, you know, the influx and the impetus of cloud technology, of cloud telephony to us has been huge over the course of the last 7 or 8 months.
Thank you.
And then just being able to sort of, I guess, catch up with the level of demand that we've seen from businesses, and to be able to deliver those services that essentially and ostensibly keep them running. And very much looking at what you're doing here in terms of promoting the North and Lancashire in particular, is delivering the greater connectivity bandwidth and that full fibre connectivity that typically areas up here have been starved of. So we're partnering with providers to go out and deliver that full fibre connectivity into very, very local regional areas, just to enable those businesses to steal a march and to gain traction.
I think it's worth pointing. I'm going to point this out. We have the fastest internet connection in the UK right now in Blackpool, because we get the first touch on the big pipe from the Atlantic. Ladies and gentlemen, that's quite a thing for our county. Thank you very much. And Jamie Grimshaw, investment exec at FW Capital and a patron of Lancashire Business Week. Jamie, what are the challenges facing you and your customers? You provide money for projects. So what have people changed their needs? Tell us a little bit more. I lost Jamie. Jamie, can you hear me? Jamie?
I was put on mute there. Sorry, Richard.
That's okay. Jamie, I beg your pardon. Let me ask you again. Your job is to provide money for businesses to invest, and what's been the changes and how are things for you?
Yeah, it's I mean, we as a company, although I'm actually quite new to FW as a business, we specialise in funding business in the North West. Obviously, Lancashire is my home county, my patch. It means a great deal to us to be able to help businesses, get through the virus and the issues that's caused them. And one of the big the issues that we face as a business is understanding how our businesses need to adapt at the moment. We've had to adapt. How do we identify the customers? We're not able to walk around the businesses like we were. We get a feel of who we're investing in. So we've had to adapt in different ways to understand how our companies are adapting to the needs brought on by the virus. Really, it's the digital communication side of things has been a really big thing. Working from home was maybe a nice to do thing in the past, but now it's kind of enforced. So the whole communication side of things has been something we've really had to work with, and that's all businesses really in the area.
And in terms of that, how have you found it as a leader within business, Julien? Jamie, how have you found it? I know you're relatively new to this role. So how have you found that, managing that side of it?
It's pretty good. I mean, the companies and a lot of employers have invested in helping their staff work from home pretty efficiently, whether it's new tables, new tech, and things like that. A lot of employers have been very helpful with trying to help their staff with mental health as well, making sure they're looking after themselves when everything feels a bit like Groundhog Day. So I find it pretty good, to be honest. I mean, the other thing personally is you need more space. Generally, people need more space in the house at the moment. So I'm a classic example where we're having to do some building work, just to create more space, because this is going to be a longer term thing. And you need to kind of plan for that, really.
Thank you very much. Gill Hall, if I may come to you, for Butlers Farmhouse Cheeses. Very, very early on in the lockdown process, back March or April, we spoke, and already then, literally within a week of an announcement, you had already spun out a new business idea. I wonder if you could tell us what that was, Gill.
Thanks, Richard. Yes, we came into the pandemic with an absolute bang in March. We'd just come from the Red Rose Awards, Family Business Award, and we just had my son's wedding, and then the day after we got our first COVID case. Oh my goodness, we were really thinking it was going to sweep through us. So we straight away flipped into crisis management, and we divided and conquered. So I looked after people, Daniel looked after day-to-day management, he became our wartime leader, and Matthew stayed looking at the future. So we were able to do that, and that resulted in us pivoting very, very quickly and introducing Butlers Larder before the end of March. So we collaborated with our local community, so other suppliers, lots of artisan food suppliers, and pulled together an offering to go direct into consumers' houses throughout the whole of the North West. Obviously, Lancashire was the biggest, but we went actually right up to Cumbria and down to Liverpool and Manchester. And that created a lot of extra stress, but it also created a lot of excitement and a lot of energy. And I think that what the crisis did for us, it sort of fast-tracked a strategy that we were already on of going direct to consumers. So we'd done the thinking, and we were just able to roll it out that much quicker. I think, yeah, it morphed into Letterbox, which was posting it through people's doors, and it was just a perfect little cheese board. People were then interested in the environment, so we then fast-tracked our strategy of recyclable packaging, and the whole thing was sort of held together by people who were working under pressure, but who were feeling a sense of being a key worker and important for the nation, feeding the nation. So
there's nothing more important than my Lancashire crumbly cheese, Gill. You carry on. Don't feel any compunction about this whatsoever. Look, they're all nodding.
We were trying very hard to build on the culture that we've been working on for the last 8 years, I suppose, with our lean manufacturing journey, and that's what sustained us, really, that togetherness of people and all the personal development work that we've done with our team. They were on the same page, and we tried to put up inspirational notices all around the place to say, look, it is going to be hard, but it actually will be worth it, and we're looking after your jobs for the future. And of course, we didn't want to take on agency people because there was a fear of, we wanted to run what we call a closed herd, but you have to take on extra staff. So we were going through that process. We were busy. The country ate a lot of cheese and still is doing. It's moving actually from wanting cheddar at the beginning to now wanting speciality artisan cheese. So blue.
We've become very fussy, Gill, over the last few months. We know what we like.
Yeah, get your blue cheese early for Christmas, because the country is short of cheese. So if Black Sticks Blue's on your list, go out there and shop quick.
Honestly, Gill, give over. Now, Black Sticks Blue, that's Gill's pitch today. Just one more thing, Gill. I'd like to ask you this, and then we're going to move around the room. How have you changed over the last few months?
Oh my goodness, I would say I've had my best and my worst leadership moments in the last few months. I've transmitted everything that I felt straight through the organisation. So that was fear at the beginning, and then it was obviously excitement, and yeah, we've had to get through it as a team, really, and obviously we've had our fair share of dramas. there's been, you know, lots of challenges keeping staff coming to work. So I think we've grown. I think we've refound our entrepreneurial spirit, and I think the whole energy that these new launches, and we've still carried on with our innovation. We've not taken our foot off the pedal there. So Sunday Best, our 50-year-old Lancashire recipe, it was already in the pipeline. It's gone there. And a perfect British cheese board as well. So we've carried on doing that, and I think we've just had to celebrate as much as we could. We've had lots of things on the yard because you've got to be socially distanced. We've tried to do what we could to retain our sense of community. We've even built a new cowshed outside, which is a canteen. We've called it the Cowshed Canteen because literally it's Yorkshire boarding and it's outside.
Welcome to Lancashire, everybody. Thanks, Jill. I've got some questions that have come in from our attendees, from our audience today, and I wonder if I can maybe start with David Harland. David, do you think you've fast-tracked decisions due to COVID, and has that been a problem? This is from Katie Whitaker, by the way.
Yeah, I just saw Katie's question, and the answer was definitely. I was just trying to type a response, but so an example would be that we for years wanted to have a time ticket system here, but couldn't quite get our heads into, you know, either doing it or, you know, it was seen as a bit of a risk. In 4 weeks from start to finish, we introduced it whilst we were locked down, and we had to have it because it allows visitors to pulse through the site here. And the reason I mention it is we know that we will have, you know, we've got a much larger market there in Lancashire. And so and the site is smaller in Morecambe than the site here. So we wanted to be able to test that, and we've done it. I mean, I could give you countless other things. I mean, we've done so much at this site down here, which will be useful. And I think the key is, you know, we always start on the basis you'll get 80% of the decisions right. You know, if you go on that kind of Pareto rule, the 80-20 rule, then go for it. And I think, you know, just listening to Jill, she's absolutely right. It's the plus and the minus, isn't it, of the pandemic? But you know, back yourselves. You'll get most of them right.
Yeah, thank you very much. And maybe I can, Dan, can I push this one to you? This is from Nicola Merritt. What are the panelists' views on how to attract graduates to Lancashire? I think what we're really talking about is we're in a competitive environment here. We've got Manchester, we've got Liverpool right on our doorstep. We've got Leeds pretty much on our doorstep. How do we as Lancashire attract graduates? Dan, this is the $1 million question, and over to you.
Well, I dropped Nicola a very quick line in the chat, slightly flippantly, just saying jobs, creating good quality, highly skilled jobs, and lots of them. Basically, we've heard from some people around the table today about some of the diverse offers that are here in Lancashire. It's not all about being based in the middle of Manchester and working for one of the big four accountancy firms. You know, there are a real scale of jobs that exist, and I think something I touched on earlier. You know, we need institutions, we need big employers like people like BAE and others in the areas like energy and advanced manufacturing to start really promoting their areas as the place to come for those kind of jobs. You know, it's not going to happen in the big cities. It's going to happen in places like Lancashire.
Thank you very much. And here's a question from Adrian Ashton. I'm going to précis this. Do we need to spend more time and money building a coherent northern identity? Do we need to spend more time and money creating a coherent northern identity? Ben Blackman, coming your way.
Well, I suppose I'll sort of selfishly talk about Lancashire within that. I think Lancashire needs to build that identity more. And constantly on not on my travels, but on these sorts of calls these days, people cite Yorkshire as the example. You know, in Yorkshire, they talk about the place, Yorkshire. Wherever they're from, they're all united. It's the greatest place on the universe. Everyone in Lancashire feels the same about this place, but their particular place of Lancashire. I live in a little village right in the middle, and it's staunchly proud of its place within this area. Won't talk to the village just up the road. In the same way, we know our cities are obviously divided. And I think, yeah, we need to unite as Lancashire. Lancashire 2025 presents that opportunity to say, like, this is us, this is all of us, and we all live and work in this amazing county. So I love the bit of Lancashire that is very competitive and proud of its own individual place within it. But certainly on the national and international stage, we have to be a bit smarter, and we have to present ourselves as Lancashire.
Thank you very much. Question. I'm going to push this next one to Julien. This one's from Jeff Taylor. We're talking about providing thousands and thousands of people to create a pool of talent. Julien, do you feel as though you can rely on a pool of talent to feed the machine of Daisy with high quality people?
I think with the expansion of that talent pool through developing and creating more of a robust remote and flexible working model, then that makes it a lot easier. I think it's fair to say that with where we're located, with where the head office is located, that previously we had some limitations, we had some challenges around finding highly skilled, very technical, very diversely educated people to meet some of the specialist roles that we had. From the core roles, then certainly I think the talent pool is absolutely there. And I think with some of the things that we've experienced and looking at how the last 8 months has really precipitated greater employee engagement from our perspective, what we're finding is that there is a pool of talent there. It's just about how we look for it and how we uncover it in different ways. So for all that I'm talking about the talent pool being expanded through not being too overly concerned about geography now, I think actually the talent pool has expanded locally, simply because people are now looking inwardly about where we invest in our own region, from the candidate's perspective, about not necessarily thinking that, looking at the chat there, people are talking about spinning fields in Manchester, about that being the utopia where they need to go. And people are very much now talking and looking about their own central location and the opportunities that exist there. So from both an employer and an employee perspective, I think there's almost a perfect storm brewing there where, we can really drive that inward investment agenda. And that's only ever going to be a benefit to the region and the people within it.
Thank you very much for that, sir. And Jamie Grimshaw, if I may come to you, I beg your pardon, I should have mentioned that last question came from Jeff Taylor. Thank you to Julien for taking that one on. And I'm going to come to you, if I may, Jamie Grimshaw. This is quite a difficult question, so I'm going to let you have a go at it. I'm glad it's not me answering it. And this is from Carol Garrett. Can we afford the big Northwest projects, given the state we're in with COVID and other issues that may well give us a bump on the nose in terms of our economy? Can we afford to keep investing? Jamie, you're the money man round the table. Over to you.
Well, that's a good question for the Chancellor, maybe, rather than me. But it all depends on the priorities that the government people see themselves having, really. I think it's well proven that large-scale infrastructure projects from the state encourage, growth in other areas, and that's why the government looks to do it to stimulate economies in certain parts. There's lots of money out there, particularly from lenders and other maybe non-traditional type of funders. So part of the struggle may be actually knowing where to look for that kind of funding. The likes of me, the banks may have a slightly different appetite for things at the moment than they did, this time last year, brought on by the virus. So one thing a lot of people could look at is where do they source these different types of funding? What type of funding do they need, really? Maybe take some advice, look at their business critically. Don't just look what you've always done before. There probably is going to be a different option available to you. So maybe take some advice if it's you as a business who wanted funding, because there's lots of options out there. There really is.
Thank you ever so much. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you to you all for your, beg your pardon, that last Carol was a Carol Garrett question, the last question. Thank you to you for sending us that question. And thank you all for your questions. I'm sorry you couldn't get to them all, but ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the formal business part of today's Lancashire Business Week Breakfast Blast. But please don't go away. We'll be opening up for networking in a few minutes. You can all come on screen then. It'll be absolute chaos and I'll really enjoy it. In the meantime, I hope you've learned a lot today because I know I have, and I don't want to reflect too much on it, but to say there are some themes that our guest brought out today which felt like they were real to my business, and I hope you can share that as well. There's plenty more coming all week. You are welcome to join us, so tell your friends. Before we close, I'd like to again thank all today's contributors, our speakers, David and Daniel, our panelists, Gill, Julien, Jamie, and Ben. To you, our audience, our headline sponsor, CG Professional, our patrons, who are AMRC North West, Beever and Struthers, Burnley.co.uk, Burnley College, the Community Foundation for Lancashire, Daisy Communications, FW Capital, IN4.0 Group, Lancashire 2025 bidding for the City of Culture, and PDS Engineering. We'd also like to thank our supporters and our media partners, Utiligroup, Downtown in Business, Lancaster and District Chamber of Commerce, and Love Local Networking. Beg your pardon, that's Love Local Networking. You can read about this session online at lancashirebusinessview.co.uk later today. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow when we'll be putting jobs and skills under the spotlight. You can use the same Zoom link to join us. We hope to see you there. And now, if you'll bear with us for a moment or two, we're going to open up for networking. I've been Richard Slater. If you can buy it in Lancashire, buy it in Lancashire. See you tomorrow. It's been a hoot. Thank you.